Namasabhaye. On behalf of Team Dharmawiki, I, Kanakavalli, welcome you all to the first session of Dharmawiki Talks, which is a series of talks on various topics in the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara or Indian knowledge systems. First, a brief introduction of dharmawiki.org. Let us now see a short video on the need for a platform like Dharmawiki.
Vayam putramaditeryo vidarta.
Dharmawiki.org is a unified knowledge resource platform to present traditional viewpoints of Sanatana Dharma available in the rich and diverse research heritage of Bharatavarsha. In short, it is a common platform which runs on the MediaWiki software and facilitates documentation of various topics belonging to Indian knowledge systems, from Vedas to Vedanta to Dharmas to Shastras, ancient Indian science, technology, etc. The Lokarpan of Dharmawiki, or the launch of Dharmawiki, happened on 6th January 2019. We've completed 4 years of launch, and the project is much older than that. Since then, since the launch, we have had a user base of 1.5 million, page views of 2.5 million. We have 400 plus registered authors on the platform and 8 active team members, and we are growing. Apart from creation of thousands of articles that you can find on dharmawiki.org that follow meticulously formulated content and scope policies known as Dharma point of view, Team Dharmawiki also strives to connect personally to institutions, gurukulas, academicians, independent researchers, and traditional scholars, to name a few, to further facilitate development of authentic content. And to reach this content being diligently developed to inquisitive readers and seekers, Dharmawiki.org has released above 90 newsletters to more than 15,000 subscribers. You can all subscribe to Dharmawiki newsletters by visiting dharmawiki.org, and you can click on subscribe to Dharmawiki on the main page, and you can enjoy reading the newsletters. You can also find the older newsletters in the previous newsletter section of dharmawiki.org. Dharmawiki has also organically garnered its social media presence with over 45,000 followers across platforms like GeoChat, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and now Instagram also. Dharmawiki Bharat is the YouTube channel of dharmawiki.org, and the channel has a total of 47,000 views and a watch time of over 3,100 hours, wherein you can find our various speeches that happened during the launch of the website, as also short shloka videos bringing about the intricacies of various concepts like dharma, ayurveda, etc. So please do visit Dharmawiki Bharat YouTube channel and stay connected with us through social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and GeoChat. One more initiative of dharmawiki.org to reach out to inquisitive seekers of Bharatiya Jnana is Dharmawiki Talks that we have all assembled here for. This is an initiative of the IITB Honeybee project, and we are extremely thankful to our sponsors, the Ashok Goyal Trust and the Hindu University of America, for their continued support. The topic for today is Samskaras, a psychosocial perspective. And we have one of our senior team members, Srimati Shri Nischala Manyamji, presenting the topic. A brief introduction to Nischalaji. Srimati Shri Nischala Manyamji hails from a scholarly family and grew up in a traditional family grounded in dharmic and spiritual activities. She has done her bachelor's degree majoring in genetics and chemistry, and then completed her master's degree in biotechnology at the University of Hyderabad. She then went on to complete the medical laboratory studies in Southwestern Medical School, Dallas, Texas, and has received many scholastic awards throughout her education, while working 12 years in various capacities in pathology and vaccine development labs in the United States, all the while continuing to study Sanskrit informally, until she decided to shift tracks and took up a master's course in Sanskrit from PS Telugu University. She later also did a second major in Sanskrit Sahitya in the Acharya level course at the National Sanskrit University, Tirupati. During her 5-year association with the Dharmawiki project, which is an IITB Honeybee project initiative under the guidance of Professor Ganesh Ramakrishnanji and Professor Ashish Pandeyji, Nischalaji has been instrumental in many content and site development activities, such as developing site policies that we call as Dharma Point of View, creating the framework for inducting new authors, the website launch, apart from contributing scholarly content on various topics of Indian knowledge like the Vedas, Vedangas, Darshanas, Upanishads, as well as ancient Indian science and technology. She has authored many foundational articles on the website. She is also currently involved in preparing a curricula and textbooks for mathematics based on Leelavati Ganitam for K-12 students as part of Professor Ramasubramanianji's team at IIT Bombay, and is also working towards evolving a curriculum framework for IKS-based videos in association with the Anadi Foundation and IIT Madras, which is a project undertaken under the Dharmawiki initiative. She is currently pursuing her doctoral studies in Hindu studies at the Hindu University of America, and in association with them, she works on building glossaries. Nischalaji enjoys being a part of the intellectual yajna to bring out ancient values and concepts back into usage in contemporary education and society. I now request Nischalaji to kindly begin her talk. We also request all the participants to kindly remain on mute, and you can post any of your questions in the chat box. We will have a separate question and answer session at the end, where all the questions from the chat box will be read out to the speaker. Over to you, Nischalaji.
Namaste, everyone. I thank you for giving an opportunity, Professors Ashish Pandeyji and Ganesh Ramakrishnanji, for this opportunity to participate in Dharmawiki talks. And being a part of the Dharmawiki team, I'm greatly indebted and happy to be here. So the topic today is Samskaras, a psychosocial perspective. So Samskaras, the term itself is used in the sense of purification, refinement, decoration, etc. It represents the positive events in life, and it is a term that is having a wide import in the Sanatana Dharma text. Tarka Sangraha, a logic text, calls samskaras a faculty of recollection, smriti. Mimamsakas use it in the sense of purification of things, and so on. Nyaya Shastra calls it one of the 24 gunas. In the present context of Dharma Shastras, it is defined as Atma Shariranyatara Nishtaha Vihita Kriya Janyaha Atisaya Viseshaha Samskaraha. It is that right and observance aimed at producing a peculiar kind of merit or virtue or a quality that is connected with the mind or the body. And they refine, condition, and purify the psychosomatic processes to enable us to live within the framework of the Purusharthas. And this is done by personality development, along with imparting sanctity and importance to the human body. It encourages all material and spiritual aspirations of man and prepares him for an easy exit. Basically, samskaras are all expressions of the self. And the self is usually equated to the Atman in various Indian traditions. Atman or Jivatma or Atman in a person. It is the metaphysical self. We have other selves like the physical self and the psychological self. So Atman is basically encased in the subtle and gross bodies, like the buddhi and the manas forms the subtle psychological self. And the physical self is formed by the physical body, the sense organs, and the physiological processes. This physical or the biological self acquires a social self right at birth through the social identity. And there are many factors affecting the social self. It is an expanding, growing self. With our ashrama systems, the varna system in the Indian traditions, which contribute to this formation of the social self. There are other identities such as national, regional, linguistic, religious. Then there are the economic and ecological factors, the environmental factors involved in forming the social self, in expanding the social self. As the age progresses, the professional identity comes into picture. We have intellectual factors such as Arishad Vargas, the Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaryas, that also contribute to the social self, that also regulate the Artha and Kama, Purusharthas also regulate the goals of a human being, also regulate his social self. So, with this background, what is the motivation for the social self? It is to be noted that this self-expression or the emotions are the key driving force for the origin of the samskaras. Every human being has natural tendencies, and this expression of the natural tendency itself is shown in the Garbhadhana samskara. The childhood samskaras, they mark the biological developmental milestones of the child. The Upanayana is a solemn occasion, and it involves teaching discipline and conduct to the student. The Vivaha samskara, it talks about, it is full of celebrations and felicitations on entering the Grihasthashram. Like this, we have other key purposes such as the popular, moral, cultural, social, spiritual, psychological, biological, even materialistic purposes for those who want higher worlds or those who want liberation or moksha. Samskaras have something to give to them also. And then if we see the Antyeshri samskara, it is expression of sorrow. So all emotions are in picture here. So social self evolves through social self-expression. And this is in the form of social activities such as the samskaras. So we have many samskaras, say about 11 to about 48 samskaras. The highest number being given by Gautama Maharshi. So in these Sodasha Samskaras, in the current times, we follow about 16 of them. It's called the Shodasa Samskaras. And they are tightly interwoven with the life cycle of man. Talking about the age of the person, these samskaras start from this conception, not birth, conception to death. It should be noted that the prenatal samskaras bear high significance for the developing child. It's actually not too much for the parents, and that's why it is that the samskaras start with the Garbhadhana and not Vivaha. So we have the avasthas or the stages of life also progressing accordingly. We have the Balya Avastha, the birth and childhood times when Jatakarma, Namakarana, etc. are performed. Then when the child reaches the educational stage, we have many educational samskaras, Upanayana being the most important of them. Then we have the Vivaha Samskara, and this spans from the Yuva to Vruddha Avastha. And as man progresses in age, he learns many things until the point of death, and that is when it is the Antyeshti Samskara that happens after his exit from the world. But lately, Samskaras have become very symbolic and a fashion these days, with events such as termed such as like baby shower, thread ceremony. There's no interest to the, or knowledge much present about these samskaras. And there is no understanding how the samskaras are governed or limited. So here we take a look in present discussion how all these samskaras are regulated, how they play an important role in our life. These samskaras are governed by the Purusharthas, and in an ideal situation, we would have, like starting from the conception, the prenatal samskaras, the focus would be on the good qualities of the child versus sensual pleasure. And here we can relate how these samskaras are aligned to the regulated Kama Purushartha and not the unregulated Kama of Arishad Vargas. So it's basically, is it a good citizen versus sensual pleasure? And there is also duty towards the ancestors that's involved here. It discharges the Pitrarana when procreation happens. In the childhood stage, the focus is on physical development of the child and in giving basic dharmas to the child. So Dharma Purushartha becomes more prominent in this phase. Actually, all through life, the dharma is the foundation. All dharmas are there in different stages of life. And here we are mentioning the samskaras based on their prominence. When a significant event happens, how do those Purusharthas come into focus? When we talk about the Vidya or Vidyarambha Samskara or the other educational samskaras such as Upanayana, here the focus becomes more on social, moral, and spiritual value-based education. So the personality is founded on spirituality. It's whether the child has a moral or an immoral character. And this quality of having a spiritual base in the education is unfortunately lacking in many areas. So focus is more on secular or subject-wise education rather than learning the skill of education itself and regulating our character based on it. And coming to the Vivaha Samskara, the focus gradually shifts to the duties towards family and the society. So it's virtually like good citizen or bad citizen. So here all the four Purusharthas come into play, the Artha and Kama being regulated by the Dharma and Moksha. Individual personality development happens on grounded spiritual values. For example, here in the education stage, while he's learning more of Swadharma, his childhood has a foundation of already the Samanya Dharmas. Then as the person ages, here moksha may be considered as a sense of spirituality rather than directly as liberation in that sense. As the individual advances in age, experiencing various facets of life, he learns to detach himself from the materialistic activities And the social self starts to contract and he turns inwards, exploring his own inward self. The rest becomes insignificant. Then he reaches till the point he's finishing his course of life. He has already started on his moksha dharma. He has already discharged his responsibilities. But when we look at the Antyeshti Samskara, it is like handing over the baton to the next generation, where they are taught the dharmas, they are taught all the ancestral duties that they started off when the conception happened. So like this, the social self is always ever expanding if left unchecked by Purusharthas. And this brings about quite a few psychological effects if it is left unchecked. So how do we regulate this social self? We can say that the samskaras do regulate even the social aspects, not just the social self, because they transform the person and then bring about a change in the society. They encourage performing karma or worldly duties within the framework of dharma and moksha, and they keep a check on kama and artha purusharthas. They promote the associated I consciousness or the agency and experience, the kartrutva and the bhoktrutva bhavas nevertheless. But they are always working within the limits of Purusharthas and ensure a spiritual foundation for material well-being also. And how do they do this? By having quite a few duties and rules of conduct for every stage of life. We have starting from Garbhini dharmas. There are dharmas even for a Garbhini, how she should conduct herself. Until the sannyasa ashrama, we have sannyasa and even moksha dharmas described in the Mahabharata. So every stage, every point of time, there are some frameworks within which people, the ancient seers, have given a direction for us to work through. And this inculcates a vision of self as pure and sacred, giving a positive outlook of life. And this is required in the present day, as the whole world is ridden with many kinds of mental illnesses, such as depression, schizophrenia, etc. So how do we take care of this? By nurturing good habits and a tendency to conform to the rules and norms of the society. Basically, we need good citizens in the society. And samskaras help mold good citizens in the society. And that has always existed, because if we see our parampara, we can see that the generations still do exist in a regulated manner. Some lineages are there which are still following the samskaras, and that's good news for us. So how do samskaras build a social framework? They influence the society in two systematic ways, which is siddhantikarana and abhyasa. Analyzing the set of rules, regulations, and the rationale involved in conducting a samskara, a person can stabilize his thoughts and beliefs, and this gets eventually transformed and transmitted into the society, because the people imitate others and we learn by that way. It takes a person unswerving on his life's journey, because he's developed the viveka and an unshakable notion of what is right and what is his duty. So constant practice through childhood, from childhood, is absolutely required. And this creates a personalized working framework tailored for individual situations. It's not that we have all answers in all textbook for all situations. It has to come, the logic has to be built up, and it works gradually, bringing about a transformation change subconsciously. So a person automatically imbibes the principles and learns to work in accordance with nature too. For example, consider the psychosocial framework being built during the Upanayana Samskara. What happens during Siddhantikarana? Take the rituals, the mantra Upadesha, the Yajnopavita. Look at the dress of the attire of the student. He has the mekhala, he has the staff in hand. They all have their own representations and the reasons why they are put in place over there. So also the social customs, the meal with the mother or the sister, the bhikshatana, the abhivandana, All these have their own particular reasons why they are placed there. And so also, if we look at the support, the social, economic, religious, material support that comes from outside, the samhitas, etc. are required. So all this kind of a set work gives a gravity to the samskara, and it kind of enforces, reinstates the social identity, the varnashrama identity of the person. And it also promotes family bonding. When everybody comes in together, that's a celebration. The tradition, the family tradition is kept intact. They follow their Veda, the Veda section, whichever Veda they follow. They have a particular tradition, and that is encouraged and maintained. And the most important thing, the child is impressed with the idea that, okay, now I have to stabilize my educational purpose. He learns life skills from his guru. In earlier days, we had the gurus and the gurukulas. The gurus were the examples for the students, and they followed, because they lived together, they followed how the guru was conducting his daily activities. The life skills are imbibed into the student, the chores are there. They all teach life skills as well as the education in the Shastra simultaneously. And a holistic nature or environment is being created. When this goes on with a repetitive practice, the abhyasa happens, and the intellectual outcome or the buddhi vikas happens. So also personality is developed and framed. While the mantra chantings are going on at that time, and even now in many of the houses, we have puja vidhana and reciting of slokas. So the environment is protected. We have a clean environment in which a child is being raised. His mental faculties are improving, are developing day after day. He is starting to prepare for the grihastha life, and he also learns to continue his educational tradition, which is the paramparika vidya. With this framework, we can see that there are other factors affecting samskara, the Garbhadhana, for example, here. We can note that there are external influences happening while a woman is pregnant. So there are many things to be taken care of. So the example that we can see here is Prahlada, where Narada teaches Prahlada the Narayana mantra while he was in the womb. And this is not restricted just to the spiritual education. We can see the example of Abhimanyu, who learned warfare while he was in the womb. Similarly, there is the time of conception that is important, and it has to be followed. Like the birth of Asuras, Hiranyakasipu and Hiranyaksha, to Maharshi Kashyapa and Diti. So that is the reason why the time of conception is said to be important, where Ayurveda Shastras prescribe night time for the union of the wife and husband, or they are told to exclude certain days, or we have many other factors like this with respect to the time concept and why it should not be performed at other parts of the day. Then if we see the mother's mental state, this is a significant impact on the child that is developing. And the best examples are the births of Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura from Ambika, Ambalika, and her Saki. So also we have the Varudhini Pravrakya story from Markandeya Purana, where Varudhini, even though she is cheated because of a Gandharva who has taken the form of Pravrakya, her mind was totally remaining, or it was totally with Pravrakya's form of brilliance and radiance and his good qualities. And she gave birth to a child who later on went on to become a Manu. We can clearly say, without any doubt, that samskaras were instrumental in giving rise to many people of many good qualities. That's why this land had many Mahatmas from time immemorial. Coming to the goal of samskaras, 3 specific goals are achieved, and this applies to all samskaras. It's the dosha marjanam, the gunadhanam, and hinangapurti. Dosha marjana refers to removal of the faults within that system, whatever it is. And gunadhana talks about good qualities, adding up good qualities. And hinangapurti says it's filling the gaps of deficiencies. Let's see this with an example of Annaprashna. If we consider the Ayurvedic perspectives on a gross scale to understand this concept, we can say that a child after, like, say, about 6 months of age has a tendency to express itself by moving around and picking up things and putting in the mouth, and it also consumes food. So the child's tendency to express the requirement of solid food by consuming mud is removed by the process of giving solid food. And it cleanses the person totally. The tendency is removed totally, not just the act of consuming mud, but the total tendency of putting things like that and eating whatever is available from the outside on the ground. So this cleansing or the dosha marjana happens here. Gunadhana is fairly easy to relate to, where nutritional foods for aiding the physical and mental development are given to the child during the growing phase. Hinangapurti, it talks, actually the whole Annaprashna itself can be talked about in the sense of Hinangapurti, because until this stage, the child was consuming only milk, and slowly certain deficiencies start to arise. And if they are not taken care of by adding the solid food at that point of time, these deficiencies will further lead to more complications in the development of the child. So solid food itself is given to avoid the nutritional deficiencies arising out of consuming only milk. Similarly, we have more examples of various social aspects relating to all these samskaras. When members of the family have a duty to keep the expectant mother mentally and physically happy, or there is this namakarana, which is an important tool for socialization. Children were considered as a mark of prosperity, and that is a social issue. So teaching the children through the childhood, the dharmas, that was important, because they have to take up a social role in future as grihasthas. So their education consisted of those teachings also, how to conduct themselves, how was the social decorum. And when it comes to marriage of girls, for example, she goes from her father's home to the husband's home, and there is a social transition. And this happens in every single home. So the society itself is moved by all these social events. And of course, marriage is a social necessity because it was the central prop of the social structure. So now let's come to see how the decline of samskaras happened. Even though they were quite prevalent in until recent centuries, we should understand why they have declined. And that is primarily attributed to the decline in Vedic study. If the Vedic studies were declined or removed from the educational system, there arises a linguistic difficulty because more languages came into play and time lapse was there. Again, performance of yajnas was also lost in the system. There were new social and religious forces, and samskaras could not be transmitted or molded into that system. And then there was a shift of venue from the home to places of pilgrimage. New paths of devotion also led people away from the rituals, and that abhyasa stopped happening. But let us see how much, if we look at the past in all these generations that have been coming down, there was a vision of samskaras, and it is still relevant to the contemporary society. And we can see how these samskaras can be readily applied to the contemporary society. There are many psychosocial achievements that samskaras have contributed to this ancient Indian society, and they are still going to be relevant even now. For example, the prenatal samskaras were connected with sex hygiene and eugenics until they themselves evolved into independent sciences. And these were recent developments. And education samskaras also became the social means to enforce compulsory education. Otherwise, which other nation in the world has so much literature, so much development of the shastras, so much progress intellectually, such that there were so many books written and so many ingenious ideas were given to the world. And this was the time when no secular agencies existed to enforce this samskara or enforce this system of compulsory education on the masses. People reorganized themselves and molded into this format. It was this compulsory education along with spiritual strict discipline that led to the high standards of intellectual levels and produced an able ancient society, which we have to revisit and bring back. At that time, the goal of the student was to make himself adept in life skills and become a useful and pious member of the society, as against the modern system of education, where our focus is only on secular studies. Coming to Vivaha Samskara, it had regulated a number of sexual and social problems. There were types and forms of marriage, limitations on marriages. The Gotra system was there to, and the evaluation of the bride and the groom, the selection of the parties, the families themselves were selected. The family background was read out in Sita Rama Kalyana. The lineages are described. The nuptials are evaluated and conducted. So the need of the hour right now is to understand these siddhantas and abhyasa. If we see even the Antyeshti Samskara was a combination of duties of the householder towards the dead and the living. It is a very different scenario here, which is not completely integrated and not seen very much in the other civilizations. And maybe it is seen in different forms, but this is a unique thing in Sanatana Dharma, where the family and social and biological hygiene are taken into consideration. There are the asaucha rules in place, and it is also a consolation for the survivors who are grieving for their departed member. With this kind of a psychosocial achievement list and practical applications, we can apply them. Are they applicable to the present condition? If we take an example of samskaras offering solutions to social problems, we may look at, for example, the relationship between the wife and the husband, or family relationships. We have a lot of sexual immorality, children being born out of wedlock, love affairs, divorce, harassment by families. That's also a social aspect that we have to address. In the present day context, we can clearly see that the society is lacking in social and moral value education and discipline. Mainly, we have to address this in the Vidyarthis and the Grihasthas. We don't find an understanding of the temporal and transcendental values. The focus is also not there on spiritual foundation. The Artha and Kama Purusharthas have gained more prominence. Every child is trained from age 5 into what career he has to take in, but not as how good a citizen he has to become. And how do we fix this problem? It is that we have to start training our children in all these principles of Upanayana and Vivaha Samskaras. And these are simple, and it's not like a Vedic education where they're very, very difficult or they require a lot of spiritual knowledge to understand. It is not like that. So these principles have to be imbibed slowly, and we have to find means and ways to teach our children the strict discipline along with these principles, make them practice repeatedly in small ways, starting from childhood itself. Moral teaching has to be given, value-based teaching and education has to be given. And when they come of age and the marriage, the Vivaha Samskara takes place, the vows and values should be revisited almost all days during the life of marriage, of the life of a person. So samskaras put us in these 3 parts of life where we are preparing actively as a karmic step. We are doing the purification of the mind by our rituals or our actions of repetitive actions of rituals, or even practice of the disciplinary code of conduct. So it finally comes about with Chitta Suddhi. It brings about Chitta Suddhi. And it transforms the mind of the child gradually, bringing about social integration, personality development. And the society sees a value-based transformation from crude animality into refined humanity. And as this goes on as a practice, the training happens in the Upasana Marga. The Siddhanta is understood, the Abhyasa is done. They find a moral upliftment and they learn to live within the framework of the Purusharthas. They eventually, as age progresses, they reconcile ritualism with philosophy by themselves. And once this knowledge happens, they enter into the sadhana step, the third phase, or the Jnana Marga. And in this sadhana, they realize the sanctity of the body as a fitting instrument to experience this transcendental state of consciousness. They learn to de-link karma and the Atman. They learn to excel internally. The social self starts contracting. It becomes insignificant, and the self, the social self, is no longer a big player in their life. And they experience the invisible inward spiritual grace. Thus, we can see that these samskaras make a holistic impact on the whole life of a person in all angles, moral, ethical. It brings about order from disorder and is aligned with the Purusharthas. A person learns to regulate artha and kama, learns to control his desires as much as he enjoys them during the life phases. Wealth, career, status, society, achievements, all these were important or become important at a certain stage within certain limits. And if their intellectual base is dharma and the spiritual base is established, we can see that they will evolve. Every person will evolve from the limitations of the self, from the contraction to infiniteness or boundlessness. Thus, I would say that samskaras, which have preserved this society from such a long time, will play and will be revisited and reintegrated back into our society. So you can read about samskaras. There are many references on our site. And there is a category. To read more about samskaras, please visit dharmawiki.org. And there is a category section, the samskaras. Thank you one and all. Dhanyavada.
Thank you so much, Nishchalaji, for bringing to fore the psychosocial perspective associated with the age-old tradition of samskaras, beginning with an explanation of the Indian concept of self and moving over to explaining the connection of the four Purusharthas in this context and explaining the purpose of samskaras through examples like Garbhadhana, Vivaha, etc., emphasizing on their relevance today, on not only how they offer solutions to today's social problems, but also how they help in the nivritti of the individual self. We would now like to take a few questions from the chat. I'll read out the questions to you, Nishchalaji. The first question is from Ajinkya Navreji. He has two questions. The first one reads, as the various darshanas have various interpretations or purposes of samskaras, what is the source of the 16 samskaras? What is the source of the 16 samskaras that are considered important? This is the first question.
Okay.
And sorry.
Answer that first so that I can give a better idea about it.
Sure.
We don't have much said, or the terms of the samskaras that are used presently have not been mentioned much in the Vedic sources. but the processes have been explained over there. That is the reason why the Vedas are a foundation to this. If we look at the number of samskaras that have been explained, we have a number of samskaras in the Gruhya Sutras. We have them in the Dharma Shastras and Smritis. Later on, we have the Nibandhas, which have quite a few of these explanations that are being followed in the present day societies. So definitely the sources are well explained. You can go to the site and look up as being shown here on the screen. The Dharma Shastras are quite a few, and the Gruhya Sutras have been explaining all these, to be particular in answer.
Thank you, Nishalaji. So I think that partially answers the second question also, which says, kindly suggest resources, scriptures and interpretations to study samskaras in their original forms. So I think Nishalaji had a references list, which is also available on the page on Samskaras on dharmawiki.org, and it's been shown on screen as well. So I think you will find the resources over there. Am I right, Nishalaji? Please,
yes.
If you want to.
Yes.
Yeah.
May I say you something?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Myself, Dr. Anagha Joshi from Pune University. Just to add Nishchala ma'am's answer, for 48 Samskaras, Gautama Dharma Sutra, the oldest available Dharma Sutra, you can get each and every list of Samskaras, 48 Samskaras. And after the Uttama Dharma Sutra, Baudhayana Dharma Sutra, Vasishtha Dharma
Varaha. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get 48 Samskaras. Just to answer or just to add ma'am's comment. Sorry.
No. Thank you so much, ma'am, for adding your comments. The second question is from Surendra Kumarji. Whether the Upanayana Samskara should be followed for all the kids or kids of specific groups in the society?
Earlier it was said that all the groups had been following Upanayana Samskara because everybody needs to be educated. But as time passed by, there are, due to various reasons that have been explained right now, the society had been changing. There were invasions, there were problems in the survival itself. So this Upanayana Samskara, which marks a student out, like his attire itself is marking him out. So to protect themselves, people had scaled down that procedures. And we see that right now, not many people want to follow that. And there are only few segments of the society that are following the Upanayana Samskara in current situation. But yes, initially, all of them had the Upanayana Samskara. And if we have to look at the associated knowledge that is transmitted based on the various occupations, that also has become more secular now. And so the Upanayana Samskara has been greatly reduced. I hope that answers his question.
Thank you, Nishalaji. Another question reads, Sanskaras are to be followed strictly based on one's family traditions, Gotra, region, or are they followed only on the basis of Vedic texts?
There is a pattern that is followed in the sense like the Gotra, the Sutra, the Charanas, etc. are given for every person in whichever Vedic channel that he is born in. And so the Dharma Sindhu and other such texts describe if one particular Vedic channel follows that they have their certain traditions that they follow. So each Veda has its own kind of tradition. So yes, it is based on the Gotra and whatever that are prescribed in the Dharma Sutras and the Dharma Sindhu, like Nibandhas.
Thank you so much, Nishtala ji, for an enlightening session. And I thank the participants for their very good questions and making the session interactive. With this, we conclude today's session. Team Dharmawiki expresses heartfelt gratitude to all the participants for having taken time out to attend today's session. And we eagerly look forward to seeing you all at the second session in the Dharmawiki talk series titled Bharatiya Panchanga एवं पाश्चात्य कैलेंडर का समीक्षात्मक परिशीलन. Please do subscribe to our Dharmawiki newsletter by visiting dharmawiki.org and follow us on social media platforms to receive updates about these sessions. Thank you and wishing you all a very auspicious Makara Sankramana.